Welcome back to America's Fractured Politics. I'm happy to have with me again Jeff Mansour. Jeff is a frequent Substacker and a real interesting voice because he has a perspective on things that is unique and fun to read. So I thought we'd do a little session today and just talk about the stuff that's going on in the world and just gonna get Jeff's feelings and have a little exchange. So I'm going to start with the obvious, Minneapolis. It's rocked the country, but we still have a lot of people who really aren't engaged yet, who may be upset, but who aren't in the streets. That doesn't say there haven't been a lot of people out there. There have been in a lot of cities. But you wonder just how many people are still affected by what's going on in their lives, the price of food and everything else, to be concerned by this. And it just concerns me that it will allow ICE to continue doing what it's doing because they're being pushed along by a corrupt president who is basically willing to do anything he wants to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to take a informational tidal wave, I guess, to get people first to understand how this all impacts them. First, to get them to understand what's going on. Because I had lunch with a very dear friend today, actually, and we were just talking about things in general. And I was mentioning to him things that I guess I just take for granted that everybody knows about because I'm on Substack maybe too much. But he wasn't aware. He was a little bit aware and understandably said that he had a hard time watching the videos of the murder in Minneapolis. And I understand that. I have a hard time watching these videos too, but I sometimes have to force myself to watch them. And it's almost, I wouldn't say it's an obligation I feel, but it's something that I feel like as citizens, we have an obligation to know what's going on and understanding what our government's doing in our name. He's a good person, extremely good person. He's just busy, has a very responsible position. Watched enough of it to know that he didn't want to watch any more of it. But the point I'm trying to make is there are probably millions and millions of people like him who, if they did know, once we talked about it and he understood a bit more, he was appalled, And I think that as information gets out, as people can't help but see what's happening, you just have to hope that Americans still understand what it means to be an American. And that this activity, what's going on, what ICE is doing, is just un-American. And the response that leadership, quote unquote, leadership is giving to these actions is just horrific. The lies, the blatant, transparent lies, the ridiculous lies, the easily refutable lies.
Well, they're refusing to investigate him, but they seem intent on investigating her.
And her spouse, I just read. I don't know if you read that.
And her spouse, yes, I did read that.
It's crazy. And God bless those prosecutors who resigned in protest. And that's what it's going to take, I think, is that more and more people are just going to have to say, I've had enough of this. I can no longer be a part of this. Whatever justification I was using to convince myself that it made sense for me to continue participating in this, to try to make things better, or concern that the person who might replace me is going to be worse. I mean, we heard all this in the first Trump administration. The people who resign now, I really respect their choice. I mean, I'm sure they probably did want to stay there thinking they could do some good, realizing now that it's impossible to achieve anything other than being complicit with the horrors of the Trump administration. So they resigned. I really respect that. But good God, how did we get this?
Respected too.
How did we get this?
I don't know. I ask myself that question every day. The other thing is that I know a lot of people in justice who haven't resigned yet, but who, if they're pressed, probably will resign. That leaves an interesting problem because they're going to be left with incompetents that they've recruited, mega incompetents who can't file a brief.
Exactly.
And courts are going to throw those out because they're not properly properly written.
Yep.
They're not properly argued.
Yep.
And they often don't have any foundation in fact or law. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to go about proceeding to do what they want to do, which is just indict everybody that they can get their hands on.
Yeah, but it's like what he's doing with Powell right now. His first impeachment centered on him attempting to extort an investigation out of Zelensky, an investigation of Biden out of Zelensky. And if you recall what he was looking for, what Trump was looking for, was just announce an investigation. Just announce. You don't have to really do an investigation. There doesn't have to be any, you don't have to feel like there's been any wrongdoing. Just announce an investigation. So even if he has incompetents out there who don't know how to manage a grand jury, or who don't, as you said, who don't know how to submit documentation or whatever. I mean, it's enough to get it into the headlines that, oh, he's investigating so-and-so. Oh, they must have done something wrong. Because like a lot of people, they were lucky, I guess, in this disinformation society. If they read the headline, maybe we're not lucky. Maybe that's bad luck that they just read the headline. But they're just low information voters and low information news consumers. If they're even consuming it from a legitimate source. So what are you left with? I mean, I've read different reports on, I guess you might call it citizenship. What do people understand about government? What do they understand about our rights as citizens? And it's minimal. It's crazy. What you and I grew up in the Cold War, during the Cold War. And it was really clear what it meant to be an American. We weren't perfect. We screwed up. We made mistakes. We left Vietnam in helicopters off the roof of the embassy. It was humiliating. Oh, My Lai massacre, all the other horrible things that occurred in Vietnam. But we still had the memory of our fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, whoever might have been involved in World War II, or were on the home front and just as important as anybody on the actual front in a lot of ways. And, we could take pride in the Marshall Plan. We could take pride in NATO. We could take pride in the fact that we did not go into Japan as conquerors. We went into Japan as, yes, we won the war, and yes, they had to, they had to surrender unconditionally. But it was just a matter of a decade or two, and they were up on their feet, and from a manufacturing economic perspective, and
Eating with us.
yeah, and how did we manage those situations? How did we, as a nation, feel about sending the care packages and support for other nations, but all that, it just seems like, I hate to say it's a generational thing, but it's like the memory of those virtues has just evaporated and been replaced by a hollow, rancid scarecrow, I guess, of what this country used to be.
I have a theory, and that theory is that television did tremendous damage to Americans' ability to think clearly, to think critically, to follow what was going on. They got plenty of information. It was like sucking information through a fire hose. But with the exception of the networks, news divisions, most of what they were thrown was pablum and junk. And people basically developed a tendency to live on a diet of pablum and junk. And then when the internet came along and smart devices came along, it got worse. So now we have a society that's full of information, but has no knowledge.
No wisdom, no judgment. But they've got lots of opinions.
No judgment.
They've got lots of opinions.
Yeah.
And you try to talk with someone, and I live in a red part of Virginia, and work in an even redder part of Virginia. And so I hear it all the time. And if I'm trying to talk to somebody just reasonably, I used to be a Republican. I grew up a Republican. I'm no longer a Republican, haven't been a Republican in a long time just because I worked in politics enough to know that it was all a bunch of crap. Stuart Stevens and I think, could have some interesting conversations. Um, you try to talk to people and they just are so uh, incredulous that I don't believe the way that they do. How could I not? You're such a nice person. I just don't understand how you don't believe that. You must have Trump derangement syndrome or something. And it's hard to just even get beyond that. And
You, of course, could flip that on them.
definitely. And I try to, and I try to say, well, do you support this? Do you support that? I mean, what do you, is this consistent with your values? I mean, and a lot of times it's not. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't quite say who's deranged, but it's, I do make the point of saying it's not, you're not living the values you're espousing. And you're sure not expressing your values or reflecting your values in your political choices. So and for that reason, I've refrained from getting into conversations with a lot of people. I think lately, though, what I have noticed, and this is anecdotal, and I hate to even bring up anecdotal stuff because it can be so misleading, but I used to see a lot of Trump flags. I don't see them anymore. I used to see the red hats out in public. Don't see them anymore. Now, they still may harbor the same beliefs, but they're just going back to how they were 10 years ago, and they just kept it all to themselves. Who knows? But
Well,
yeah,
the thing that I'm noticing is that when you take polls, the polling data that's been that's been seen over the course of the past couple of months shows very clearly that there is a solid base of 36% of voters that will support him no matter what. What's interesting, though, is that Democrats, of course, are completely against him, and independents are starting to run at very high numbers against him. And that's what will really do the Republicans in, because they've lost the independents.
I agree. And I think that if Democrats, if they play it right, if they have the right candidates, they could sweep the House. And I think if they would show some gumptions, they could take the Senate. It would be harder, of course, with the Senate, but if they just throw up, and I've heard some politicians say this, well, it's going to be really rough to get. You don't talk that way. You don't lower expectations. You motivate people. You try to recruit good candidates. I think they have a chance to take the Senate seat in North Carolina. It's just south of where we live. But you can't go into it automatically signaling defeatism, whatever. You have to go into it saying, look, our nation's in a dire situation. And it's time now for people to make a choice. And the people who are making the wrong choice are really showing who they are. And, this latest killing of Nicole. I'm sorry, is that Renee Nicole Good? Sorry. Just horrific, tragic. How many darker skinned people have been shot, murdered by ICE? Many more. Maybe it takes having people see someone who they can more readily relate to, even though, they make a big deal out of her being a lesbian and having her pronouns and all this crap. Hopefully that gets people to say, look, that could have been my daughter. That could have been my sister. That could have been my aunt. This can't be right. This cannot be right. And what I'm fearful of is you're going to have someone with a strong sense of justice who has had limited experience with law enforcement. They're going to see something go down and they're going to be so indignant and astounded that this is happening in America. They're going to try to intervene and they're going to get clobbered. I mean, you see that happening already to a certain degree, but I'm talking about somebody really getting, the crap beat out of them or shot or whatever. Just because people, I think, the average person, I think if they see this happening in front of them, they're just astounded. They're amazed. Well, what did that person do wrong? They must have done something wrong. They must have been like a super violent criminal for those 6 guys to be dogpiling on them and having all those weapons. As I think people, as their perception is enlarged, let's say, and they're more willing to see things differently, I think it's a matter of time before something even more tragic happens. And so angry and so heartbroken over the weekend, and just, I know I have a strong sense of justice, and I have a strong sense of anti-bullying. And to see these videos of people just getting hammered, I mean, just thrown to the ground, kids. You've probably seen the video of
Taken out of school.
Yeah, and at school, exactly. Tear gas, beating up teachers. I mean, just the video of the young man who was taken from the Target store, the employee of Target.
Yes.
And to hear him say, "No, I'm not okay." I mean, just his voice, just that alone, just his voice. It's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And the important thing is to not let that heartbreak turn into depression, but redirect it into something where you can try to make a difference, even if it's just a little, even if it's just participating. Never participated in the demonstration, never did this, okay, I'm going to do it this weekend. That's what needs to happen for us to try to make a difference.
Grand scale, too.
A grand scale. Yeah, the only way we get up to a grand scale is to get people who've never been part of a demonstration to say, you know what? My neighbor's involved. They've invited me, or I saw this on the news and I saw somebody from my church or from the Kiwanis or Rotary or whatever. I'm going to be there too. I am heartened.
I just worry that it's going to take the economy tanking before people get out of the streets.
That's a very good point, because it's like all this stuff happens over the weekend, and the reaction from Republicans is just muted. They're running away from microphones. Oh, I don't know. I didn't read the tweet. Oh, I didn't see that interview. Whatever. Trump goes after Powell. Oh, this is really bad. This could just be terrible. Oh, they're going on. And it tells you where their priorities are. And, I'm glad they're concerned about the economy, but they can walk and chew gum at the same time. And they can be concerned about the economy, but they can also be concerned about, even if they just think of it from an economic perspective, what foreign company wants to come and invest in the United States? Like, what was the factory? I can't remember, what's Japanese, was it Hyundai? Japanese manufacturer in the South, where their factory, the building site was raided, and all of their, a lot of their employees.
I believe it was Hyundai. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. I believe it was
Hyundai. Yeah. A lot of their employees were detained, handcuffed, manhandled, whatever. What foreign company is going to come and invest in the United States and risk that happening to their executives, their engineers, their whatever? So, okay, you can define all this in economic terms, but it's just striking to me. It's just striking to me that the Republicans only get off their butts when it becomes an issue that impacts their financial backers, or even their personal financial well-being. And I put up a note the other day about Substack about it was a Dr. Seuss cartoon from way back when, back before he was just doing the children's stuff. He did a lot of political stuff. And I'm going to try to start posting some of those more frequently, because they're just biting, anti-fascist. And the cartoon was basically 2 guys who were, I don't think he labels them as Republicans, but they're anti-New Deal. And they're operating a wrecking ball on a crane. and their target is social infrastructure or something like that. It's shaped like a building or a bunch of buildings. And they say, oh, we're just going to knock out the boards that FDR built. Well, obviously the idea is that they're going to knock down the entire building. But the point is that Republicans have been out to destroy the New Deal since the New Deal was passed. And
Right.
now they finally see it in their sights. You know, they got rid of a good chunk of it through Reagan. And now they see social safety net and, welfare, the Social Security, the SNAP. I mean, all these different programs, the whole idea of government accountability, whole idea of labor rights, any kind of a check on corporations. They see the opportunity now just to eliminate. This is something that
What they don't seem to realize is that there are constituents like these programs.
their constituents like these programs, and these programs are what created the middle class in America.
Yeah.
And if you look at what's happened to the middle class since Reagan, it has just, it has plummeted, and the super wealthy have skyrocketed, and the level of poverty has increased. That doesn't make America stronger. The New Deal was passed basically as a counter to any temptations the public might have to be tempted into socialism or communism. I used to live in Dearborn, Michigan, and I did some work in the immigrant community there, and they would tell me stories. People who'd been there all their whole lives would tell me stories about how Henry Ford had machine guns set up on this corner, that corner, whatever, and he had his goons out there battling. They still talked about the Battle of Eagle. I guess Eagle Pass is the name of the street, where the scabs attacked the workers. And they had this huge battle, and the police were involved. And it's just that type of labor strife we don't have, and we haven't had in this country since that time, because we had labor protections enacted into laws, and those laws helped both unionized and non-unionized labor. I've never been unionized. I benefited from everything that those union workers sacrificed for and achieved. All that's being stripped away. Why?
Yeah, salaries are going
Yeah.
down. People are being beaten into the ground. They're being beaten into submission so that they don't have the energy to fight the administration anymore.
They're being beaten into
No one will
submission.
fight the regime because they're being beaten
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
They're being economically beaten down. You've got health insurance. The system in this country is nuts. It's not about health. It's about profit. You've got all those rising expenses. You have all this surveillance capitalism and attention capitalism. That's just, I like to listen to Scott Galloway, and he has the saying where it's like, he said, these software programs are designed to pick you up by your heels and give you a good shake until all your money falls out of your pockets. That's basically what it's about. And so you have all these economic trends that are sucking money out of your life, your family, at the same time as all these other costs are increasing. And so it's no wonder that there's so many people who are a paycheck from bankruptcy. It's just, that is not a strong nation. And if anything comes out of this, hopefully it is not the Democrats saying we're going to rebuild what we've lost. Hopefully they come in and they say, this is an opportunity to create the nation, that reflects our values and reflects the priorities that we should have as a nation. Because, you look at any organization and you look at their budget, and you can tell what their priorities are. And you look at our budget, and you can certainly see what our priorities are as a nation. And that's just not what the average American wants or needs.
Problem with the Democrats is that there's so many Democratic members who are taking corporate money, and a lot of those corporate bosses are friends of Trump. So basically, they're afraid to offend them, and as a result, the policy becomes too similar to what Trump wants.
Certainly.
And they have a hard time fighting it because they feel like they're going to lose their campaign money.
Yeah.
And if they would just do what Elizabeth Warren and other people do and get their money from the public, they could run campaigns that are effective, and they could run campaigns that are honest, and they could win.
I agree. 100%. I agree.
She's shown them the way.
I think the one thing that Kamala Harris proved is that even someone, she's a bit corporatist. I mean, she's not exactly the example of the anti-corporate or the I'm not going to take corporate money type candidate, but she received so much support from small donors. I mean, millions of dollars. That should prove the point right there that people are willing to put their money where their beliefs are politically and will fund the party. Kowtowing to the corporate side of things got us the Supreme Court that we have today. And that has led to irreparable harm until we can change the court, impose some common sense ethics rules on the court. I don't see that changing. I have a very simple, it would probably take, I'm sure it would take a constitutional amendment, a very simple common sense way to solve the election funding issue. And that is to say, only voters who can vote in a particular race can make a contribution in that race. So you have to live in the congressional district that you're voting for. You have to live in that district to give a contribution to one of the candidates. You have to live in a state to give a contribution to that state's Senate candidate, what have you. And at the same time, maybe outlaw PACs and super PACs and other forms of funding. And then you don't have to worry about dark money, because dark money has no way to access its way into the election. I mean, they can fund issue campaigns and talk about, have ad campaigns on whatever that issue, but they can't mention the candidates. So, I mean, it just seems to me that would make a lot of sense to the everyday person that, oh yeah, it makes sense. I mean, why should someone else from outside my congressional district be able to influence who represents my congressional district? It should only be people who live in this congressional district that can fund a candidate in that congressional district.
I don't believe it would take a constitutional amendment as a lawyer.
Let's make it happen then.
I believe what would have to happen is that the court be completely revamped before you propose something like that in Congress, because this court will shoot it down.
Yeah.
So the first course of action has to be for a Democratic president and Democratic Congress to finally show the balls and dismantle this court by moving to 13 justices, ethics rules, and term limits. You do those three things and you change the court.
No, I agree. I was against packing the court because it didn't work out great for FDR. But I think that that amount of corruption and it's the Republicans. Okay, you can't say that both sides did it. I mean, or you can't do. What about the flower arrangement that was sent to whatever? I mean, that's just not even chicken feed. That's like flea feed. I mean, we're talking about minuscule. Alito and Thomas are, if they're not corrupt, I don't know what corrupt is. They are. They should, their robes, they should be required like a NASCAR, like a race car at NASCAR. They should be required to put their insignia of the various different donors that they have, so that people understand who's actually backing their judgeship. It's outrageous. I do want to say something positive. Because I feel like I've just been doom and gloom. It's hard not to feel doom and gloom right now, but there's a lot of positive things going on. And I used to work for a large civil, I guess you call it, like it was a combination of like I would say it was a combination of like the Chamber of Commerce and a civil rights organization in Detroit. Like the Urban League and the Chamber of Commerce got together and had a baby. Um, I learned a lot. I was early in my career, and I just learned a lot about race. I learned a lot about race relations. I learned a lot about community development, community activism. And I was meeting people like Rosa Parks and others, and I actually gave her a ride once, picked her up at her apartment and gave her a ride to a community event, which was,
I hope you let her sit in the front seat.
well, it was just the two of us. But if she wanted to sit in back and have me put on a stroker's cap, I would have gladly done that. But, um, just an amazing person and so kind and sweet and she was older then, but she had just a presence. But it just, I, I've met so many people who were not as well known as her, but of the same generation. And they would talk about, how they were involved in this and that or what have you. And not just African American people, but also white people who were part of the I'm going to draw a blank, the folks who took the buses down to the South and the Freedom Riders.
Freedom Riders.
Yeah, Freedom Riders.
Yeah.
And what they faced and what they had to deal with. And the folks who went to the lunch counters and forcibly desegregated the lunch counters in a lot of those restaurants in the South. They were all young people for the most part. And I see today, what heartens me is I see today young people who are following the ICE goons and not obstructing, not breaking any laws, just following them, recording their activities, putting themselves in danger, sometimes getting arrested, sometimes getting roughed up, what have you. But those young people, and sometimes they're teenagers, I have so much respect. It's going to take folks like that, just like during the desegregation era, civil rights era. It's going to take young people like that who are going to make the difference, who are making a difference. And I'm encouraged by that. I think we're creating the situation is creating a generation of young people who have risen to the side. Sorry about that. Creating a generation of young people who are rising to this crisis and meeting it square in the face, and they are not afraid, and they're going to they're the ones who are making the difference. That to me is just really encouraging. Very.
Now let's hope they come out and vote.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, you're right, and I know a lot of young people just say, "Oh, there's no point to it." But I think that what we're seeing now, what's in front of us, in front of our eyes every day, is how voting makes a difference. And for too long, how it was, every election was like the most important in your lifetime, and no, you got to get out and vote. In every election, it would be, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But this time, people see, they understand why it's important, and hopefully they will be involved in continuing that. They're literally on the streets activity and activism, and turn that into electoral activism. And you know what? It kills me to hear Null and these other clowns talk about activism and activists as if they're terrorists, as if activism is a dirty word. The Tea Party, they were activists. It
all depends what activists. It all depends what activism you support.
Exactly. Pro-life activists. All this nonsense. Activism is the bedrock, I think, of American democracy. Without activists, we wouldn't have the government that we have today. We wouldn't have had the American Revolution. So I say, God bless activists, even if I don't agree. You're out there, you're making a difference, you're expressing yourself, you're doing it civilly, legally, whatever. That's what it takes to make a difference. And I think Trump and his administration have massively overplayed their hand. I think that they're going to get swiped down. They're going to get pushed back by the courts, by public opinion, what have you. And I think that more and more people are seeing through Trump's facade. It's no longer funny. They could say, oh, yeah, he makes me laugh. Oh, did you see what he did there? Oh, that was just so funny. It's like, no, they're seeing through it all now. And I'm hopeful without being stupidly optimistic that we're starting to see a change. And I think that they're bringing this on themselves inadvertently. And this whole nonsense about what was the term? Unlimited immunity or whatever phrase that J.D. Vance used. No, they don't have unlimited immunity. These ICE guys, they're going to be held accountable just like anybody else. And even if he pardons them all on the way out the door and just hands out blanket pardons, hopefully there will be a list of people who did these horrible, terrible things, and that will follow them the rest of their lives. Whether or not they are legally held accountable or not, they will face societal accountability because they turned against this society. You're muted. Mark, you're muted.
How's
Yep,
that?
that's good.
Yeah, muted as
Yeah.
well. What I saw in Minneapolis was the murder of an innocent woman. What I saw afterward appalled me as well, and it showed me who these people were. He called her a fucking bitch after he
Exactly.
murdered her.
That's exactly right. How they think they can get away with that? The what I've tried to stay off Facebook because I just couldn't handle it anymore. I just the lies and the willful ignorance and the cruelty exhibited by people. I thought I knew them. I thought I knew who they were. But it's just not. I couldn't stomach it anymore. And so for my own mental health, I had to step away. But I've had friends who
We've got a
stayed
few
on
minutes left.
Facebook.
Oh, I know. I do too. I never went on. I never was a member of
Oh,
Facebook.
well, good for
I'm glad
you.
I wasn't.
Good for you.
I'm
You
glad I
you
wasn't.
avoided that.
I saw it for what it
Yeah,
was.
you avoided that bit of surveillance capitalism. But some folks, friends of mine who are like-minded, they say, yeah, it's just really interesting to see how people react to this murder. And they're just really exposing who they are. And I think that they may revel in that for now, but that's just going to catch up with them at some point.
We've got a few minutes
Yeah.
left. Let's talk foreign policy.
Sure.
We're now on the verge of action in Greenland and Iran. The one thing I've learned about Trump is that when he says something that represents good for people, he lies about it. It never happens. When he says he's going to do something awful, he does it. And I fear that this gambit with Greenland is designed to break up NATO and get him Greenland, which is what he wants. He said he told the New York Times that he had a psychological desire for it. This is insanity. And then there's Iran. Demonstrators in this country are considered to be scum, but in Iran, they're to be defended.
Yeah.
Now, what if he goes into Greenland and Iran? What's going to happen?
Well, I think you're right. I think it will. I think going into Greenland would destroy NATO. You'd have NATO without the United States, so you could still have North Atlantic, given that Canada would be a part of it. But we'd become a pariah nation. And the Europeans, I mean, they should be sending signals behind the scenes if necessary, that hey, we own a lot of your debt. Don't count on us buying any more of your debt, for one thing, and uh, try to make some sense, hammer some sense into the people who can be swayed to divert his attention away from Greenland and towards something else. His ball. I mean, good God, what a monstrosity. Um, but I think that the Europeans, if they were advising NATO, I'd say let's have some multi-nation maneuvers in Greenland, some Arctic training or whatever, some anti-submarine, whatever. Just we're gonna send a bunch of troops there for training purposes. And
I wrote a piece the other day where I recommended both of
yeah,
those things.
and maybe I'm getting the idea from you. But to do that, to just say, look, we're not going to take this lying down. We take the threat seriously. First of all, the whole concept of it even being considered is just so outrageous. And then the Republicans who still have a brain should be clear right now and say, if Trump goes into Greenland, we would support articles of impeachment.
Yes.
I mean, because he'd be violating a treaty that this nation, multiple treaties that this nation has signed, that the Congress has approved. Reckless disregard for American public, or the American public and our national interests. Just so many ways that he would be in violation of the Constitution. And I was thinking about this today. If you think about America and what we were before Trump came along, you think about a wealthy parent, and all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, that parent's no longer in the picture, or the inheritance goes to this person, and they just say, screw it, I'm spending all the money. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want. I'm gonna be reckless and have parties and I'm gonna waste this inheritance. That is basically what Trump has done, just like he did with his father's money. He inherited something amazing, something beautiful, something wonderful, something unique.
And look what he did with
And
it.
he's just pissed it away. And if the Supreme Court and their rulings basically empowering Trump to make it feel like he could do whatever the hell he wants, if every president had acted that way, our republic would not have lasted, would never have lasted as long as it did. And for him to come in now after those generations, the generations of inherited wealth, in a sense, that this country represented, and I'm not talking about just financial wealth, but the wealth of our values, the wealth of our national history, the national heritage, all the good things you've done, the bad things you've done, how we've tried to overcome the worst of what we've done and avoid those mistakes in the future. He's just taken all that and squandered it. Just squandered it. That's not conservative. By any stretch of the imagination, that is not conservative.
And conservatives should rise up in opposition, but a lot of them don't.
Because they're not conservatives. They're MAGA. MAGA is not conservatism. I used to consider myself a conservative. But no more. I mean, it's like I see it for a bunch of lies that it was. I was a small town, in a sense, Main Street type conservative capitalist, and capitalism is still the best way, I think, economically to spread wealth. But it has to be capitalism that is
regulated,
and it has government there to prevent it from selling the rope that is used to hang it, in a sense. I think I was at Stalin or Lenin or whoever said that. That's what it should be about. It should be about preventing that from happening, living our values as a nation, not allowing our heritage to be squandered for short-term, petty, self-serving gains. Uh, it's striking to me. One quick thing. I know we need to wrap up, but people need to understand the danger with artificial intelligence. It's not just about, they'll be able to engage in surveillance capitalism and extort or extract more money from us. It's that. And it's about job losses, lower skilled jobs and that type of thing. But it's also about control. And it's about the oligarchs who are funding the worst of what we're seeing. We think they are so smart because they've earned so much money. They want to control our economy, our society. They think they know best. Artificial intelligence is the Trojan horse, I think, that gets them inside government, inside our pockets, inside our bank accounts, inside our private lives. And
their agent is J.D. Vance.
Yeah. And nobody's asking for artificial intelligence. I don't hear people out there saying, oh, I can't wait to, blah, 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 because of artificial intelligence. It's like every technological advancement lately, last generation or so, I don't think has really benefited society. Social media, the internet is a wonderful thing. Social media has been a horrible, horrible poison in our system. It could be used for good, just like they thought, radio could be used for good. Imagine how children will be able to participate in educational programs from miles and miles away, rural kids, whatever. Then television, same thing. And my God, human nature is to turn whatever amazing advancement that comes along that could benefit humanity. Human nature turns it into some horrible excess that perverts whatever good there might have been or brings out the worst in this. And I think AI is going to be that on steroids. I mean, you look at all the deep fakes, you look at all the, what is truth, what's accurate, what's reality. That's just all going to be turned on its head. And if we don't prepare for that, and we don't prepare our kids for that and grandkids for that, and have a civil society that can cope with that and have regulations that can control it, we are screwed. And I don't want to end on a bad note, or a negative note, but it's like, good God, if people don't see that threat and understand it, and then wonder why Trump is saying, oh no, we're not going to regulate AI. Well, good God. I mean, with the stock market dependent on a handful of AI-oriented companies and AI investments to kind of keep the economy chugging along. Yeah, of course they have a vested interest in supporting AI and letting it go on unfettered. That doesn't work for the people, doesn't work for our nation. I don't think it works for the world. But here we are, we're standing on the precipice. I don't know what the average person can do about that, but I think it's wrong-headed and narrow focus to think of just the Trump administration as being the threat. The Trump administration is a threat, but the bigger threat behind the Trump administration, the people who are pushing artificial intelligence down our throats. And we're going to suffer if we don't make that connection, if we don't tie those two things together and demand common sense regulations at the same time as we're demanding accountability and change from the Trump administration. I think we're making a big mistake.
As disconcerting as this issue is, I'm glad you brought it up. With that, thank you so much for coming on. This has been incredibly enlightening. It's been incredibly fun. And let's do it again.
I'd love to.
Terrific. With that, that's another episode of America's Fractured Politics. I will see you next episode. Jeff, have a good rest of the day, and we will talk soon.
Take care, Mark. Thanks.